China didn't just grow fast, it rewired the global marketplace. And it's showing up in America's shopping carts, apps, and factory plans. From ultra-lean manufacturing to lightning-fast e-commerce, Chinese playbooks are reshaping what we buy and how it's delivered. Prices drop, variety explodes, and US brands scramble to keep up. But at what cost? Today, we'll map how China built this edge through manufacturing scale, tech, and smart trade tactics, then zoom into the US arena, e-commerce, retail, and new service models. Finally, we'll see how America is pushing back with policy, supply chain shifts, and a manufacturing comeback. So let's rewind to where that edge began. Not in Silicon Valley, but on the factory floor. For 2 decades, China grew at breakneck speed. Now growth is steadier, official targets hover around 5%, but the machine it built still dominates. China produces roughly 1/3 of the world's manufacturing output, backed by megaports like Shanghai, moving close to 50 million containers a year. That scale wasn't just about cheap labor, it was about building the full stack, steel to chips, batteries to brands. Policy set the direction, Made in China 2025. Then dual circulation to rely more on home demand, while private firms learned to move fast, squeeze costs, and iterate weekly, not yearly. Look at the new 3: electric vehicles, lithium batteries, and solar panels. BYD turned from a battery maker into a car powerhouse, selling millions of plug-in cars a year and briefly topping global battery EV sales in late 2023. China's now the world's largest auto exporter, around 5 million vehicles shipped in 2023, and it builds over 80% of solar modules. When you control materials, components, and logistics, you don't just compete on price, you set the pace. E-commerce became the testing ground. At home, platforms like Taobao, JD, and Pinduoduo trained hundreds of millions of shoppers to love flash deals, live streams, and instant feedback loops. Warehouses got smarter, couriers faster, returns easier. That playbook, data-rich, mobile-first, brutal on costs, soon looked for growth beyond China's borders. But the engine isn't without misfires. The property boom that fueled local budgets and household wealth has cooled hard. Developers stumbled, unsold housing piled up, and local governments face heavy debt. Authorities cut mortgage rates, lowered down payments, and even set up programs to absorb excess housing into public stock. Yet confidence takes time to repair. Add tighter tech and data rules at home, and export pushback abroad. From new tariffs on EVs to scrutiny of batteries and solar, and the glide path gets bumpy. So Beijing is hedging. Trade is tilting towards Southeast Asia. ASEAN has been China's top partner in recent years. Factories diversify into Vietnam, Thailand, and Mexico, while advanced lines for chips, AI hardware, and industrial robots stay onshore. At the same time, stimulus nudges consumers to spend, think auto trade-in subsidies and appliance upgrades, to keep the domestic flywheel turning. If you want to read China's next move, watch where subsidies and supply chains overlap. That's where the moat deepens. And the most aggressive export of that system, the ultra-lean, app-powered storefront, has already landed in the US. In the next part, we'll see how that e-commerce playbook is rewriting America's shopping habits. And that storefront now has 2 names glued to America's home screen: Shein and Temu. In 2023 and 2024, they lived at the top of US app charts. And Temu even bought back-to-back Super Bowl ad slots to make sure your grandma knew the orange bag icon. Here's the quiet engine behind their surge: the de minimis rule. If a package coming into the US is valued under $800, it usually enters duty-free with limited inspection. US Customs processed over 1 billion of these low-value parcels in a single year, and a huge share were direct-to-door shipments from Chinese sellers. That means your $7 phone case often flies straight from a Shenzhen warehouse to your mailbox, skipping most tariffs and middlemen. Pair that with software. Shein's real-time retail starts with micro batches, maybe 100 pieces of a new design, then scales winners overnight. Temu uses PDD Holdings' playbook: gamified deals, dynamic pricing, and heavy logistics subsidies to keep prices absurdly low. The apps nudge you with spin-the-wheel coupons, daily check-ins, and time-boxed flash sales. It's retail engineered like a mobile game, and it works. Logistics is the other superpower. Orders are aggregated in China, injected into air cargo lanes, then distributed through US hubs with USPS, UPS, and FedEx handling the last mile. Delivery that started at 10 to 14 days now often lands in less than a week because these platforms stand up temporary warehouses and forward stock popular items. The insight for any retailer: when you collapse design, manufacturing, and delivery into one feedback loop, price and speed stop being trade-offs. But there's friction. U.S. brands accuse Shein of design theft and counterfeits. Lawmakers worry de minimis can let unsafe or forced labor-linked goods slip through without robust screening, clashing with the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act. Data privacy questions keep surfacing around how these apps track users. And returns? The economics are so tight that some items are refunded without being shipped back, raising waste concerns. For American retail, the shock is real. Fast fashion chains are squeezed, Amazon faces a price war inside its own marketplace, and teen shoppers now discover trends on Shein before they hit the mall. In Washington, proposals are piling up to curb de minimis for China and tighten enforcement. The loophole might not stay open forever, and this isn't just online. The same hyper-efficient, app-driven model is now stepping onto Main Street, from tea shops to hard discount stores, testing how fast U.S. incumbents can adapt. Next, how that disruption plays out across American industries. And now it's leaking into the real world. The playbook that crushed prices online is rolling into American streets, malls, and even bus depots. Start with retail. Shenzhen-based Miniso has quietly spread across U.S. malls with candy-colored hard discount lifestyle stores, tight footprints, rapid fit-outs, and a hit factory supply chain that refreshes shelves constantly. PopMart, the Chinese designer toy phenom, opened splashy flagships and a web of kiosks, turning impulse buys into a data game with app loyalty and limited drops. Even Shein, born online, now runs pop-ups that draw lines around the block to juice app installs and collect first-party data. Food and beverage is following. China's new school F&B chains, think hot pot giant Haidilao, and the tea brands testing U.S. neighborhoods deploy app orders, centralized prep, and relentless process control to squeeze costs and lift throughput. The contrast in speed is stark. Chinese operators are used to going from concept to store in weeks, not quarters. Store build-outs are templated, menus iterate in real time based on sales data rather than seasonal planning cycles. Under the hood, this is an efficiency duel. Chinese brands excel at vertical integration, short design cycles, and supplier networks that can switch SKUs in days. Many U.S. incumbents still run on long purchase orders, siloed data, and lease negotiations that drag. The result? Value-priced products arrive faster, and they feel fresher to younger shoppers who live on TikTok Shop and Instagram Reels. It's not just retail. In hardware and transit, Chinese models are probing gaps. BYD's U.S.-assembled electric buses showed how aggressive pricing plus domestic assembly can win municipal contracts. In solar, Chinese manufacturers set the global price floor, forcing U.S. installers to choose between margins and made-here sourcing. If you're running a brand, benchmark your click-to-delivery time and SKU refresh rate, because that's the battlefield now. Where are the openings Chinese players are exploiting? Empty mall space that landlords are desperate to fill, consumers hammered by inflation but hungry for novelty, and competitors tied to slow legacy systems. That's the pressure point across American industries. And it's exactly what triggers Washington's next moves in policy and industrial strategy. So the response isn't just speeches, it's levers being pulled across trade, tech, and factories on home soil. First, tariffs. In 2024, the U.S. raised Section 301 duties on a targeted list of Chinese goods. Electric vehicles went to a 100% tariff, many lithium-ion batteries and battery parts moved to 25%, solar cells to around 50%, and certain semiconductors are set to reach roughly 50% by 2025. Steel, aluminum, and even ship-to-shore cranes were added to the list. The message is simple. Undercutting on strategic tech is going to cost more at the border. But tariffs alone don't build capacity. The other half is money and permits aimed at making things in America again. The CHIPS and Science Act is now translating into real projects. Multi-billion-dollar grants for fabs by Intel in Ohio and Arizona, TSMC in Arizona, Samsung in Texas, Micron in New York, Global Foundries in New York and Vermont. These aren't renderings, they're cranes on sites and long-term purchase contracts with car makers and cloud giants. If you follow supply chains, watch for where tool vendors and specialty gas suppliers are hiring. That's where the ecosystem is taking root. Energy and mobility are getting the same push. The Inflation Reduction Act pays manufacturers to build batteries, solar panels, and critical components in North America, while consumer credits now favor EVs with domestic or allied content. That's why you're seeing battery plants from Blue Oval SK in Kentucky and Tennessee, GM's Ultium sites in Ohio, Tennessee, and Michigan, and new solar lines from First Solar and Q-Cells. If you're a buyer, the label to look for is final assembly in North America. It often means stronger incentives and shorter lead times. On e-commerce, Washington is zeroing in on the de minimis loophole that let ultra-cheap parcels glide through customs. Lawmakers from both parties are pushing to exclude China and other countries of concern from the $800 fast-track threshold. And customs has been tightening data requirements and forced labor checks under the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act. Translation: more inspections, more returns, fewer mystery packages with no brand accountability. There's also a widening digital moat. Export controls on advanced AI chips and semiconductor tools were tightened again in 2024, closing workarounds. The U.S. launched an outbound investment screening program for sensitive tech, and it opened a national security review into connected vehicles that send data back to China. If you design hardware, assume data pathways are now part of market access, and the U.S. isn't doing this alone. Trade is shifting toward allies. Mexico has overtaken China as America's top goods supplier since 2023, with Vietnam, India, and the EU picking up share. You can see it in factory parks along the US-Mexico border and in new logistics lanes through Laredo and Phoenix. For companies, nearshoring can cut shipping risk and qualify products for USMCA benefits. Will this reset be fast enough? That's the real contest. China still moves with incredible speed. America is betting on resilience, alliances, and targeted scale, and the next few years will show if that formula can hold the line and win back ground. Drop your view below. Is this the right mix of guardrails and growth, or does the US need to move even faster?